there are 6 major cultural backgrounds to meditation. The first of those cultural backgrounds of meditation, even though it isn't historically the first, it is the biggest part of meditation, is Buddhism. Now, as you know, I'm sure you've seen pictures of Buddhist monks sitting down meditating. When Buddha lived, he left the palace to go and find, well, at the time, he left the palace to go and find a deeper meaning. And then he sat down and meditated. And eventually, after years and years and years of practice, he achieved enlightenment through meditation. Now, what is enlightenment? That's a subject for a different video. However, that is the origin of the Buddhist meditation. Of course, it comes from the Buddha. Now, there are different kinds of Buddhist meditation techniques. In fact, there's literally thousands, because different forms of Buddhism use a lot of different visualization techniques. And if you really look into different visualization techniques, you're going to find that there are literally about 5,000 different types of visualization techniques. Some of them are very, very interesting. In fact, some of them are actually a little bit disturbing, because Buddhists used to visualize, for instance, a rotting corpse. But we don't need to go into that, because we're not really about that. We're just going to use meditation to be happy, to be productive, to be more focused. But I thought you might like to know that there is that very intriguing and interesting cultural background to meditation. So anyway, Buddhism is the largest aspect of cultural meditation. Now, like I mentioned, Buddhists use different kinds of meditation techniques. For instance, they have Vipassana meditation, which is about seeing clearly. Vipassana is actually the Pali word for clarity of sight. So this meditation technique called Vipassana, which I'll cover in future videos, this meditation technique is about seeing your mind clearly, perceiving the actual realities of your mind. Because of course we all get stuck in our thoughts. You know, I used to be so severely stuck in my thoughts that I kind of found it very difficult to focus on the present moment, so to say. You know, so using Vipassana meditation helps you to see the reality of the mind, so that you can then move beyond it. So that's just one Buddhist technique. There's also Zazen meditation, you know, Zen. For instance, the most famous kind of Zen meditation technique is just to sit down in the lotus position that is famous in meditation, you know, with the legs crossed. And then to meditate on the breath. And there's different kinds of breathing meditations. Or another very famous meditation technique in Buddhism, in Zen Buddhism, is walking meditation. Zen monks would actually walk for hours, just focusing on the movement in their legs. It helps to establish and develop body-mind connection, which we'll get into in later videos. But just to say, in Buddhism, lots of different kinds of meditation. And they're used for all different techniques, from relaxation to boosting happiness to love and compassion. You might have heard of loving kindness meditation. It's a meditation that's used to, as the title says, to make you more receptive and conducive of love and kindness. So that's the first major part of meditation. Then there is also Hindu meditation. Now, meditation itself actually stems originally from Hinduism in the classic text, the Bhagavad Gita, a narrative that follows Hindu characters through their development. But we'll get into that later on in a different video. But for now, let's just say that Hinduism is the origin of meditation. The very original point of meditation comes from Hinduism, and there are lots of different kinds of Hindu meditations. Now, there are two in particular, two particular types of meditation that you might like to use from Hinduism. The first is mantra meditation. Now, mantras, as you will probably know, mantras are simple uh, lines of text, which can either be sacred text or can just be positive thinking text. You know, we have mantras today that aren't spiritual. They don't stem from any sort of classical text or anything. They're just positive. They make your mind think positively. So you recite a positive mantra and it makes you positive. Um, but then there's also thousands of actual spiritual religious mantras. Um, and they're used for thousands of different reasons. There's mantras for creating love, there's mantras for overcoming depression, there's mantras for destroying enemies, there's mantras for everything. Absolutely everything. There's mantras to have babies, there's mantras to everything. Hinduism has a mantra for absolutely everything that you could ever want to achieve. So that's one of the major parts of Hindu meditation is mantra meditation. There's then also very closely related to Buddhist meditations. There's also um, focused different kinds of focused meditations. So, for instance, dhyana meditation. Dhyana meditation is a technique in which you focus absolutely on one thing until you literally forget yourself, and it's almost feels as though you literally become that one thing, which is quite similar to how I would imagine um, extremely advanced athletes feel about the sports that they play, like Novak Djokovic, for instance, or Cristiano Ronaldo. I don't doubt that when Djokovic is hitting a ball, or when Cristiano Ronaldo is kicking the football, soccer ball to the Americans, um, that they feel like they're absolutely one with that ball, you know, because they're so focused on that thing. So you might say that those athletes are performing a kind of dhyana meditation, which is a Hindu meditation, as I said. So there's those two different kinds of meditations that come from Hinduism. Then, of course, there's yoga meditation. And there's two, well, there's lots of different yoga meditations, but there's two which are quite unique that you might want to consider. Um, the first is yoga itself, which isn't just about getting into a pose. It's also about pranayama, which is breathing, and it's also about connecting the mind to the body. You know, people who practice yoga are wonderfully healthy. I mean, I freaking love yoga because not only does it exercise your body, but it also exercises your mind with your body. Everything that you do to your body in yoga, you also do to your mind. And so it's incredibly healthy for your mind. And when you do yoga properly, um, not the kind of yoga that you'd see at the average studio, but when you really practice yoga properly, you should ideally be meditating on the body with every movement that you make. So that is one kind of meditation. If you do yoga, as I personally do every day, in fact, I'm about to go and start my session in a minute. If you do yoga, I would strongly suggest that you should be meditating with every movement of your body, because if you're already exercising, you're taking the time to work out your body, why not work out your mind as well? And you feel so much better. You feel absolutely freaking fabulous after meditating on yoga. So that's the first type of yoga meditation. And then there's also self-inquiry. Now, you probably know Eckhart Tolle, the author of The Power of Now. So Eckhart Tolle wrote famously about self-examination, though actually everything that he said actually comes from earlier books, most notably the Bhagavad Gita. But anyway, so Eckhart Tolle wrote about self-inquiry. It's about meditating on the self, on your perception of yourself, until you realize that the self is ever changing and that there isn't really a self at all in reality. Because your idea of yourself is only a mental constitution. It's not the real self. It's you projecting an idea of yourself. So that's self-inquiry. It's about meditating on the self until you overcome your self-created delusional concept of what you are, And at that point, you become pure creativity, because you're nothing but consciousness and perception. And at that point, you're ultimately completely free. So self-inquiry is another fantastic kind of meditation. And actually, if you really want to feel free and you don't want to be contained in your mind, or you don't want to feel like you're being put in a box, like you're put in a box of who you think you are, or who anyone else thinks you are, right? You have an idea of yourself that you're not entirely happy with. Practice self-inquiry by just meditating on your idea of yourself. I'm going to cover this in future videos, so certainly don't worry about it now, because we'll go into depth on that later on. But just know that there is a concept called, not a concept, a technique called self-inquiry meditation, and that will seriously help you to overcome any negative views that you might have towards